one. And I think I can see that with Puka. And I think that makes a good transition because I want to ask you about him specifically. He was the final pick of the first round here, 1.10. He went to Jason Klobaka. He was wide receiver 7. I just kind of want to ask you about what's your opinion about him as a player. We all get like he had a great rookie season, production-wise, unbelievable. I do think some people would be surprised that, he went behind Marvin Harrison Jr. He went behind Garrett Wilson. And I'll throw it to you this way, Nate. And if Marvin Harrison Jr. had the season that Puka just had as a rookie, there is a 0.0% chance he would be the final pick in the first round. He'd be more likely to be the first pick overall in a dynasty mock draft. So are we still holding draft capital or pre-draft thoughts against Puka Nacua, or is there something as an individual player? I don't want to talk shit about Puka, okay, because he's a great player. But just like, is there something about him as a player or maybe the ecosystem that you think puts him maybe towards the bottom of this first round as opposed to like the first 3 picks?
Yeah, I actually consider him in real football terms. I think him and Amon-Ra St. Brown I kind of consider them the same. High end, they're more high end tier 2 guys to me. They have to be designed some things, and really stylistically they're very similar. Even if you wouldn't think it at first, they really are. They're both power slots naturally, but they do everything. They're triple threats. They can rush the ball a little bit. They do the dirty work, and they can get open, especially from the slot through power. It's power and body control is how they win. I don't consider him that true blue 1 because I don't ever picture St. Brown or Nacua, not to like drag St. Brown into this, but why I don't consider him maybe that true blue 1 is I don't picture them lining up as an ISO receiver and just winning on those types of routes. That's not how they win. And that's fine. There's not a lot of guys that can do that. They're really hard to find. But that's why I think some of this, he's going to be a hype. He's in a Sean McVay offense, like St. Brown's in that Ben Johnson offense, but like where all of his touches are perfect. They're designed perfectly. So I don't think we're ever going to be in a world, as long as McVay's there and Stafford, or at least some quarterback answers there, where we're like, oh yeah, Puka Nacua really fell off. I think it's going to be impossible to maybe attain those highs, especially because, especially what the receivers went through last year, Cooper Kupp missing time. It kind of was just a perfect storm for Nacua touches. As before Demarcus Robinson became a thing for them. They were trying to make Tutu Atwell happen again. Like they really were. So that touches went to Nacua. I think some of that, and they hadn't figured out the run game. There's a lot of just variables as football is. I think this guy is very good though, and he's sticky and legitimate. I just don't think he has the speed and maybe that outside ability to be that number 1, but I think he's a firmly established number 2. Maybe pick 10's a little, like where did St. Brown go? 4? Split those 2, and that's where I consider these guys. Maybe a couple picks higher than 10 and everything, but I think it's very real because the offense is very real. I think it's sound. I think McVay loves him. As long as he stays healthy, he has a play style that's going to be sticky. Does he end up more like a Robert Woods? That's maybe his floor, I think, but that's a potential. That's like a 10-20% chance of him. I think it's maybe a Robert Woods plus is kind of like how his career kind of goes, because maybe it's just the role that he's in and I'm typecasting him, but it's just it has to be designed open a little bit more than maybe some of the high end guys.
I feel you. It just sounds.
I love Puka.
Right. Oh.
say. Having said it, in a real football sense, Puka is one of my favorites. But it's just in a fantasy and actually rating him, it's it's a little different.
It is. Look, the receiver position is really stocked. Okay, and by the way, if you go from this guy's a day 3 draft pick to now we're saying he is a tier 2 receiver in the NFL, that's enormous.
Firm tier 2.
Yeah, no question. I think he is firmly tier 2.
Yeah.
I don't think he is a tier 3 player. I think he's a step above that for sure. That's a huge compliment. Okay, that's a huge development, a huge thing. I just think it does to most people listening to this probably will sound funny to say like this guy had 1,486 yards and 6 touchdowns, 105 catches in the regular season last year, and we're maybe sort of saying he doesn't have that potential of a tier 1 player. I get that can be confused, but I also wouldn't be surprised if 1,486 is his high watermark of his career. And by the way, that he could still go on to have a legitimately unbelievable career if that's the high watermark. Like he could be a 1,200 yard receiver every single year, and that would be fantastic. So I don't know. It's just interesting to consider him as a player for sure. I think that his year 2 looks from like reception perception standpoint. I think his year 1 looks maybe similar to like St. Brown's year 2. So I think that's an interesting comparison. I do see those guys both as tier 2 receivers, which Lions fans will absolutely destroy you for saying that.
I know. Oh my God. It's Just take your wins.
I know.
If I got a great player here, and just because I know that some guys have just can't do some things. It happens. There's not a lot of guys that can do everything. It's really rare. I know. So sometimes that happens where I'm like, oh yeah, I would consider him a tier 2, and they're like, oh my god, you just act like the guy shouldn't be in the NFL. And I'm like, oh no, I love him. I loved St. Brown. Like these type of Puka Nacua, St. Brown are like literally my favorite type of receiver, power slots. I love guys that are willing to scrap and on the next play can run a corner route and beat a guy man to man. Like those are the coolest players. Godwin is another one, but yeah, it's just funny because I'm not going to confuse them for a Justin Jefferson or even this new version of CD Lamb or AJ Brown even or Tyreek Hill. Those guys are just, they win differently than these guys win.
I'm so with you. And it is sort of like the line from The Dark Knight, like you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. That is very much what it's like to be. I was a huge St. Brown guy as a prospect. Was when all the other fantasy bros were like, he only produced at the end of the year because there was everybody else was hurt. It's like, no, that guy was excellent in that power slot role. You want to draft him in year 2. Now you sort of become the enemy there when you won't just push him to tier 1. But it's tough. I do think the tier 1 should be a select group.